Lessons from high stakes gambling. Got Dan Bilzerian's book here, The Setup, and how that applies to trading. Really, really interesting discussion we're going to have here. Something I never really thought about too much. Well, I thought about it, but something I never talked about, and something I never seen anyone talk about when it comes to trading. And this is really about not focusing on the charts, not focusing on your edge, focusing on who's on the other side of the trade, what types of people are on the other side of the trade. So welcome in, fam. Much love, Trav here. Headed to the east side of Oahu. Just left the house. Check this out. Cruising by Makaha Beach. Chill summer day on the Sunday. No surf. This is where I live. Welcome to my life. If you don't know me, I am a professional adventurer, entrepreneur, risk taker inside and outside of trading, and I like to trade. I also like to read books, and this book is super interesting. So if you don't know, you probably know a little bit about Dan Bilzerian, but Dan Bilzerian made maybe $100 million trading poker, which is insane. Playing poker. People don't realize this, so we're going to talk about it, and I'm finding it very useful for my trading, actually, a couple things from this. But yeah, I mean, Dan Bilzerian, he really made that much money playing poker, and poker pros would say they didn't think that he's a very good player necessarily, at the same time being one of the winningest poker players of all time. How is that possible? Well, and Dan talks about this. Most poker players are fixated on their edge and having a small edge, like having a 4% edge and letting that edge play out over time, and they go play in tournaments. Also, a lot of poker players are focused on clout of winning tournaments, being recognized for being a good poker player, right? And Dan didn't care about any of that. He didn't care if people thought he was good or bad. In fact, Dan wanted people to think he's bad, and the reason why is his goal is to make as much money as possible. So he never played in the tournaments. He would sometimes go on the tour, but play on the cash games that happened alongside the tournaments. But as he got into these cash games, he was able to get into these sort of exclusive rich people games. In Hollywood, for instance, there's a famous one called Molly's Game that he played in, where there's it's a lot of actors, directors, and wealthy businessmen, celebrities, socialites, people with a lot of money. And part of Dan's strategy was to appear dumb, look like a fish, so that he could get in these games. Because you don't want a pro coming in with a bunch of noobs and just fleecing them, right? So he would, play up this image of, I'm a trust fund kid, all my money's through the trust fund, which actually wasn't true. He actually only received $1 million, cashed out his trust fund for $1 million in his late 30s. So it was true he had a trust fund, but he let people believe that it was a lot bigger than it was, and that he already had access to it. So people would think they're playing against a degenerate trust fund kid and not a professional poker player. He would also do things like just do things to make himself not look very good. Like if he does a bluff, reveal his cards, or if he makes a misplay, just show his cards at certain times and just act in a way like he's not very good. So he's able to consistently make money in these games, but most of his money came from playing heads up against two people in particular. So by getting in these games, he was able to, basically, I mean, honestly, it's like he was preying on people with gambling addictions. Basically, there's two guys, Sam Magid and Alec Gore. And Alec Gore, he made like $40 to $50 million from. But Al Gore is to this day worth billions of dollars. So it's a big loss for him, but nothing too crazy. Sam McGid passed away. Not clear how much Dan Bilzerian took him for, but I mean, you can have an opinions on this. Is this good? Is this bad? But Sam McGid was totally coked out, insane, degenerate gambler, and Al Gore maybe wasn't, but he was. He had too much ego and really wanted to beat Dan and just couldn't do it. He was not very good. I mean, he wasn't like terrible, but he wasn't very good, right? Dan was better. So the point is, was Dan the best poker player ever? No, he wasn't necessarily amazing in terms of probability and odds and all that. He was decent, but he was really good at getting in large games with weak opponents. Okay? So he's really good at getting in large games with weak opponents, where a lot of poker players are in small games against good opponents, right? So even a lot of professional poker players who are much better than him technically never made that much money from poker because they're playing in the wrong games, because they're playing against other pros, and they can't have a huge edge there. So does that make sense? So Dan was good at poker because he understood game selection, right? That's what made him good, is he understood game selection. That was everything. Because if Dan had tried to focus on playing the World Poker Tour, he probably never would have got anywhere. He wouldn't have made his 100 million, and his life would have been totally different, right? But he understood game selection, who to play against. Okay, so there's a couple other lessons from this book, but that's the main one I want to focus on. So let's come back to the other lessons in a minute. But so in trading, same concept. Game selection is asset selection. So what is the softest asset? What is the softest asset class? Well, what is the hardest? One of the hardest is Forex. Man, honestly, if I'm being honest, in terms of all my computer testing and back testing, I haven't found a strategy that has really huge advantage edge across all Forex pairs. I haven't found it. And part of the reason is it's so competitive. You're literally trading against central banks. And central banks have the whole departments of trading teams. Same thing with, say, the indices. On the other side of this trade is a team, possibly a whole department, but the team might have a fundamental analyst, a technical analyst, a quant, and a developer. Maybe multiples of those. You're not going up against some amateur, right? So you can have an edge. It's just, I think it's focusing on the wrong thing. So my question is, where are the drug addicts with gambling problems, right? And you can say this is unethical. You can make that argument. But my goal, like Dan's, is just to make as much money from trading, and I'm gonna do my good for the world outside of trading, outside of gambling, right? I'm doing my good for the world through YouTube, through my tours, through the agricultural work that I've done in the past and may do in the future. There's various ways for me to do good in the world. I'm just focusing on making money. So I want to know, and I've heard all these stories. We're about to drive by a guy's condo. I don't know if he still lives here, but I had dinner with him when I started trading. He would watch the ticker at night, and and drink alcohol. And he bet $600,000 on an option that went to zero, and that was his whole net worth. Went to zero. Why did he do it? I don't know. Gambling addiction, alcohol, and gambling combined. I want those people on the other side of the trade for me. Where do I find them? Well, I'll tell you, those people are trading altcoins. So I know this through a couple ways. One is, think about it. there are now large institutions that trade Bitcoin in a professional way. Not altcoins. There's no banks, central banks trading altcoins. There's basically no hedge funds trading altcoins. There really aren't teams. It's almost all individuals, retail. And the most degenerate kind of retail that takes the most risk. So I have a friend, Mosan, he lives in Puerto Rico, and he's just telling, and this guy, I haven't heard from him in a while. Last I heard from him, I hope he's still alive. I think he's still alive. I saw on Twitter that he tweeted. But last I heard from him, he lost $1 million, all of his money. Fortunately, he has a high-paying salary job, so he should recover. But he lost $1 million in a week. Derailed through drugs. He was taking Adderall and trading. And he's telling me before that he was telling me in Puerto Rico there's these whales, these guys have so much money. And if you see a random on the 1 minute, like a huge volume spike on a Saturday night, people are at parties and they're drinking and they pull out their phone and they're just aping in like idiots. So you have those type of people. And then I'm also on Twitter. And I just, over the years, I've seen mental illness in the altcoin space. People saying, an example is the quote around XRP of, it's going to the moon, you have to get in now. Bro, it's been 4 years, it's still down. Everything else is up. Why should I go all in XRP today, right? One day, you know. So you have the bag holders and the cultist bag holders. And you also have, there's a guy I follow on Twitter whose his profile name is Tarded Degen Gambler, and he's not LARPing. I've watched him take out like 4 series of personal loans and get liquidated for everything 3 times, and he's on his 4th one, and they won't give him more loans after this. He's gonna have to go bankrupt. He's a 6-figure earner. Low 6 figures, makes like say $12,000 a month. Half of that's going back to loan repayments, $6,000. And I follow him just to see what what he's doing, because I want to be on the other side of him. And he doesn't trade Bitcoin, he just trades altcoins. So altcoins, if I'm Dan Bilzerian and I want the worst possible people on the other side of me, I'm trading the altcoin space. Now, you can do penny stocks too, but there's not really whales. There's actually retarded whales in the altcoin space, especially if you pick from the top 100 coins or the top 200 coins. We're talking about maybe not billionaires, but definitely not billionaires who are trading altcoins, but there's guys with 9 figures, 100 plus million, 8 figures for sure. There's a lot of liquidity in the top couple hundred alts. And yeah, there's just so much degeneracy and mental illness. So if we want those people on the other side of us, we want to trade crypto, we want to trade altcoins. Now, in particular in altcoins, I really like trading the short side, because so much of the mental illness is fixated on just being long and FOMO, and it's going to go just delusion of price has to go to $1 million. And I understand the fundamentals. People don't understand the fundamentals. There's maybe 1,000 new altcoins being listed today. It's insane how fast altcoins are proliferating. More altcoins, more altcoins, more altcoins. You could have a situation where the altcoin market cap goes to infinity, but every individual alt goes to 0 at the same time. How is that possible? Because the number of alts is going to infinity. The number of alts is going to infinity. Super predatory environment. You've got celebrities coming in here and rugging. But I mean, a version of it. is just getting on the sell side of really pumped alts that are on decline now. So that is the main lesson. We're going to go to another lesson, but game selection is everything. You want the worst traders on the other side of the trade for you. That is the altcoin market. You have the worst traders on the other side of you, the most mental illness, the most, right? So, I mean, I'm kind of done with Forex. It's too hard. And crypto is so easy comparatively. Now, so the other main lesson that I want to get into is risk. Dan took on a huge amount of risk, and it was very stressful for him, but it worked out. And yeah, you can if you're like a regular guy and say you can scrape together $5,000 or $10,000 for a trading account, and maybe scrape together 20,000. You're not going to become a millionaire by risking 1% to 2% and having a small edge. Maybe over 20 years. You need to have a major edge, and you can risk big. So you want a significant edge, and you risk maybe 3% to 5%. And have a plan B. Dan said, yo, if I blew up, like, I'll go back to the military. Or your plan B could be, I'll just save up and try again, right? So, yeah, I'm going to come back. There's more lessons, something else I want to come back to. But, yeah, don't focus on having a small edge. Have an overwhelming edge and risk big. And you have an overwhelming edge by having absolute degenerates on the other side of the trade. Okay. So another lesson in there that was interesting is he made a lot of money by staking and partnering with people. He had a 20% profit split with somebody who won the World Series of Poker, and he made like $1 million off that. He had a partner split with a sports bettor, and he made like almost $10 million off that. And then he had there was one instance where there were these Chinese, Japanese, I don't know what the Asian was, Asian whales, essentially the same thing as the Hollywood games he was playing in, but they only let Asians in the game, so Dan wasn't able to play, and he found an Asian American pro who spoke Mandarin, so it was Chinese, and Dan staked him so he could play high stakes, and they had like a 40-60 profit split. I think Dan took 60, the guy took 40, which is pretty generous of him actually, because in the trading world, typically you take 80 and you give 20. And that guy made 10 million plus. So a lesson there is partnerships at times. If someone has a significant edge, as a business decision, going into business with them can work. Yeah, especially as you become bigger and have more money and want to work less. I think finding people to stake is good. But yeah, the main lesson here is the most important thing is who is on the other side of the table from you. Game selection is everything. Asset selection is everything. Knowing the metagame. Making sure the worst traders are on the other side of your trade. Ideally, degenerate gamblers with mental illness. Again, you can say it's not really very godly, and you're right. It's not like I'm making the world a better place. These people are going to lose their money anyways, so it is what it is. And again, you can contribute to society in other ways, especially once you have the money. Take it from the gamblers and build wells in Africa or whatever. So Hope you found it useful. I know I did. Okay, appreciate you. Much love. Talk to you soon. Peace.